This podcast provides a platform to discuss important questions and complex issues, challenge the status quo, and confront the boundaries of the establishment. I'm retired police chief Daniel Hahn. I went from being arrested at 16 to serving over 34 years in law enforcement. My goal is to keep you informed with news not being reported, voices not being heard, and the untold history of how we got here so that we can create a way forward. Welcome to A Way Forward. I have a very special guest today. We were just talking yesterday, I think it was,
Yes, sir.
where we've actually known each other for like 40 plus years.
Yes, sir.
How many people can say that other than your family, that
Right.
you've known somebody for 40 plus years?
40 years, man.
So we went to high school together. Joe has had some very unique experiences. So today is with Joe Thomas. Grew up in the same neighborhood, but I don't want to talk about all your background. I want you to talk about it. And now you are doing some amazing things to support our community, especially young people coming up, so they don't go down some bad roads and they can have dreams and realize their dreams. So I'd like to start with, tell us a little bit about your upbringing, especially what neighborhood you grew up in.
Right.
And kind of what growing up was like for you.
Okay, how everybody doing? My name is Joseph Thomas, as you know. I am a New Orleans native. I transitioned to Sacramento, California in 1979. I'm a father. I'm a credible mentor. I'm a community activist, and I'm a community liaison, right? Real prideful. Made a couple mistakes in life. Got a chance to push the restart button a couple times, right? And I feel like in these days ahead that I'm finally doing my calling, right? So started a couple organizations. I'm the co-founder of an organization called UnitedandGuided.org, right? I'm also the founder of Sacktown Mardi Gras, co-founder of 916 Community Alliance, which is an umbrella for all nonprofits doing the work in the city of Sacramento. And I'm also co-founder of an organization called New Generation Entertainment with my son, Jamari Thomas. We are super serious about giving the youth platforms to be able to showcase their talent all throughout Sacramento. Yeah, and it's just, it's just a pleasure to be here.
Cool. So I want people to understand, I think too often we boil things down and try to make things very black and white and very easy, but life isn't black and white. There's a lot of nuances to life.
Yes, sir.
And so maybe talk a little bit about all the different things that contributed to you getting in trouble and being incarcerated. What were some of the influences or things that impacted and contributed to you going down that road? Because when we were in high school,
Right.
that wasn't the road you were on.
That wasn't the road I was on, and I kind of figured it out through trial and error. What happened, what went wrong, and that's allowing me to have the vision to be able to help a lot of the kids that's actually standing in my shoes now at 14 years old, which I call the Joseph Thomases of the world. Mm-hmm. The kid in trouble, right? Or the kid headed for trouble, right?
Right.
And you're right. I had a phenomenal platform. I was given a phenomenal opportunity, which is called a Sacramento High School Marching Band, right? I'll never, ever forget how I got introduced to that whole entire platform. I met a man by the name of Daryl Roberts, right? I'd got into some trouble in Kit Carson while I was at Kit Carson getting ready to transition to
I didn't know you knew him back then.
Yes. He introduced me to Ike Padgett, right? Because those two's connection to New Orleans, right? That's how I ended up in that whole circle.
Well, you're from New Orleans, so you had it in
I'm
your
originally
blood.
from New Orleans also, yes, sir. So my mom was already looking for a mentor. She seen my will to hang out with older gentlemen and, getting out the house late night, running up to McClatchy Park when she can clearly see things that I couldn't see.
Right.
Banned from a park called 4th Avenue Park, which back in the days it was called Pebble Beach.
Yes, sir.
Because of their extensive crack cocaine in that whole era.
Well, we grew up during the crack epidemic.
Right, it was that epidemic, right? So my mom, I was like one of the only kids whose mama pull up and jump out the car with a belt and whip me up out that park and make sure that I didn't come back, to the point to where a lot of my, which I call mentors in a certain way, but also big homies then, Sean Collins, the Donald Ray Robinsons, a lot of those type of dudes had started banning me from the park because they knew I had a crazy mom, right? That didn't want me up there.
Right.
So when I came up there, they immediately seen, oh, Miss Thomas will be here in a minute. Boy, get up out of here.
Right.
Right. So when I got older, I started to appreciate that a little bit more.
But not
right?
back then.
But not back then. I just started with, oh, okay, I'm real too. Right. I'll fight you if that's the case. Right. I'm going to be where I want to be. But didn't really understand that they seen something in me that my mom knew that I had also. So ended up meeting Daryl Roberts, got into a little bit of trouble. Mr. Roberts introduced me to Ike Padgett, and I got introduced to the trumpet, right? And that's kind of like when our story came into tuition, right?
Right.
So all throughout high school, I had a platform, right? I still had a little appetite for the rough side of life, but I fell in love with the marching band. I still take pride in the marching band. If a kid asks me this day, what can I do? How can I get involved? How can I get a support system? Go to a high school and find a marching band.
How many people that you met through incarceration, if you will, are shocked to hear you were in the marching band in high school?
It blows people's mind, especially kids.
I mean, you was one of them nerdy band kids.
Right, especially kids, because they don't see that it's beyond the nerd stigmatism that the marching band gets.
Especially our marching band.
Right,
our marching band was cool.
Oh, man, come on, man. We had community, right? Not only did we have community, but we had mentors. I'll never forget a man by the name of Ward Connerly and how much time he used to take extensively with Joseph Thomas, right? He seen the possibility that prison could be in my future way back then. He seen all the obstacles that I was dealing with throughout my neighborhood. He caught me one time. We had came back from a band camp one time, right? And Mr. Connolly caught me hiding, right? Because I used to be so embarrassed that when we used to come back from our band camps, I used to be the only person whose parents wasn't there to come get them.
Had to walk home.
When we get off them buses, right? And a lot of times we got off the bus 6:30, 7:30, sometime late night, right? And even though I stayed down the street, I used to always play like I had a ride, right? And I didn't. And Ms. Conley drove around the whole school, came back around the second time, right? As soon as I came back from behind up a building, he was like, Joe, where are you going? What are you doing? And I was like, man, I ain't got nobody to come get me, but I stay right down the street. So he gave me a ride home. Me and him had a very, very extensive talk. And he was like, man, your situation now is going to change one day. You just stay doing what you're doing and you stay positive in nature. And I promise you're going to see a way out. Now, I didn't realize that way out was going to take me going to prison, right? And a whole lot of other accolades, because I felt like the mentors that I did had action that it's not that they gave up on me, but I think that I got a little too rough for them to kind of give me their all. Like, say, for instance, Daryl Roberts. After I went to hanging out after high school, hanging out in the neighborhood, hanging out at the big park, I looked for somewhat of a family figure. Right, big brothers, I didn't have no big brothers. It was only me and my sister, right? So I kind of ended up turning towards gangs and a lot of the gang leaders that was in my neighborhood for that type of structure, right? And I still kind of like give that one of the reasons why I kind of veered off to gangs.
So you were looking for something.
I was looking for something. I was looking
family, structure, mentor.
Man, yes, sir. And I ended up finding that in the Oak Park Bloods, right? Was a affiliate. I never actually called myself a hardened gang member ever in life, right? But I always considered myself an affiliate of Bloods, right? Because I knew how to communicate with Bloods and Crips. I never ever had an enemy, and I was always the type of dude that can fit in any conversation, right? And I don't know if it was because of just my aura or what they say, the swag that I had, but I noticed that even older and the younger kind of like pushed themselves towards me, waiting on to see what I had to say. So at that time, I didn't realize that strength could be manifested into something positive until I ended up making that mistake and went to prison.
And how many years were you incarcerated?
Total, I was incarcerated total 16 and a half years, right? I did 2.5 years on and off, Real Consumers Correctional Center, county jail, this and that. But then I ended up doing 14 years in prison straight. I left in 1997. I didn't come home until 2011. I'm happy to say that I'm absolutely.
We hooked up shortly after you came home out at Martin Luther King Middle School.
Right. Shortly after I came home. So, and I felt like how would I say this? Prison almost rebirthed me. You know, a lot of people, they see the negative in prison, but I'm one that felt like I needed to go to prison, right? And not only that, my mother always told me the story about how she had prayed me to prison, right? Because
Wow.
she found a gun in her house one day, right? And
That was yours.
that was mine. I think it was mine. It might have been one of the homies. I might have was holding it for somebody at that time.
But you brought it.
Right, but I
Whether it was
brought it in
yours or
her
not, you
home.
the
Right,
one, you're
right,
how it
right.
got into the
And
house.
she was like, she had prayed to God to keep me safe from bullets. She had heard a couple stories about being shot at, me being shot at, and I had bullet holes. One day she came out looking for my car. Where your car at? Somebody at the church told me you got bullet holes in your car. Lo and behold,
Did you?
there was. Yes, there was, right? But to know that that type of conversation was going along in the church
Right.
about those type of people trying to figure out a way to offset the way I was headed, right? So my mom says she's the reason why I was in prison, and she asked God to keep me safe from bullets and to prolong my life. And she said that was the reason why I was in prison. So she was happy to come visit, right? She didn't believe I needed to go that long. I didn't believe I needed
Right.
to go that long either, right? But 2, 3 years, 4 years, I needed that time out. 14 years, no. That was way, way too long for what I was sentenced for, what transpired, the reason why it transpired, right? If I'd have had a lawyer or money or means to be able to fight that, there's no way I would have been in prison all that time, right?
So talk a little bit about, because there's a whole lot of people, you know, what I see is a lot of times we ask people these questions about being incarcerated, about reentry, of people that have never been incarcerated
Right.
and have never had to reenter from incarceration to the community. And so you can read a book, you can study, you can do research all day long.
Right.
But to me, there's no substitution
Right.
for the real experience to truly understand what it is like to be incarcerated, and also what is that transition like coming from being incarcerated for multiple years back out to a community that maybe you don't even recognize anymore,
Right,
depending
right.
on how long you've been in there. So talk a little bit about what are the big challenges for the vast majority of people,
Right.
because in one way, I think you're a little bit more lucky than a lot of people that are in prison, that you had a mother
Right.
that actually cared for you.
Right.
Regardless of what happened growing up and in that dynamic. I mean, what you've just described sounds like a woman that cared about her son.
Yes,
And
sir.
not everybody has that.
Yes, sir.
And so what are some of the challenges for a lot of the people that are incarcerated for long periods of time in prison that you saw?
It always take me back to this fable, you know, old folk tale. You probably heard a few people say it, especially elderly people, older gentlemen, sometimes a few young. You never understand a man's story until you walk in his shoes, right? It is impossible, right, for you to really feel the depth of what prison is like until you walk that prison yard and understand that you have no way of controlling your destiny, right? Well, I take that back, not your destiny, but your daily activities, right?
Right.
And when you have been broken down to that level, right, it has to be a mental issue going on in your head for you not to get what's really going on around you. Now, I'm not saying everybody that go to prison get what I get, right? But you have the majority, right, that understands quickly that this is not the place that I want to be for the rest of my life. Some may be too late because they end up going there with life
They are going to
sentences.
be there for the rest
Right,
of
right. So they have absolutely no choice, but they still get the lesson. And a lot of those was the ones that I kind of geared towards, was the lifers that got the lesson, right? That understood, like, boy, you special. I had correctional officers, inmates, killers, Scott Peterson, for instance, right? Tookie Williams. I've had conversation with all of these dudes. I've been on prison yards with all of these dudes, right? So the word that I always got from people, man, what are you doing here? Right? When they look at me, maybe see me in a skirmish or something, because I had a few skirmishes in prison, right? They'd be like, oh yeah, okay, that's the one. And then when they hear me talk and how eloquent and how I can almost have a solution for almost any problem if you just give me some time, right?
Right.
It always sent people towards that underlying question, bro, how did you get to prison? What are you doing here? Man, you are finna go home and leave many men, right? And I'm like, man, now you can't be talking about Joseph Thomas. Yes, I'm talking about Joseph Thomas. And like I said, it was one of them, first, I ain't gonna say the first one, but like I said, Mervyn Brookins. He was one that seen the capability of me coming home and doing the exact same work that I was telling people that I was gonna do. And he used to always tell me, man,
This is in prison, and
this
he
was
was
in prison. He
incarcerated
was
too, in case
incarcerated
people don't
also.
know
He
who
was on a
Bert
life
is.
sentence, right?
Yeah.
At that time, he was still on a life sentence, right? Julius was on a life sentence also. Like I said, he ended up coming home and starting Advanced Peace and Movement for Life, right? I ended up coming home, starting United and Guided, and a couple other organizations that I started. But the question was always, I ain't gonna say the question, the answer was already, man, you're finna do everything that you're saying you're gonna do. You just got to believe in yourself now. Because he said, I'm not quite sure I hear you talking, but I'm not quite sure that you believe that it can be done. So I was always, when it came to the transition, right? I started transitioning in prison,
While you were,
right?
yeah.
While I was in prison. Because I had a correctional officer tell me one day, he said, it's not about the work that you do when you get out of prison. It's about the work that you do when you're here. He said, don't wait to start mentoring when you get home. Find you a couple of inmates now whose conversation ain't the right, because I used to ask correctional officers and lifers, man, what advice can you give me? At that time, I still had about 5 years to go when I started asking people these questions.
We start preparing.
Right, when I start preparing, man, I'm getting ready to go home. I'm a little kind of like, I don't want to say scared, but there's a little bit of fear going on. I'd already been gone 9 years at the time. I'm seeing life change from all different aspects right out here.
There wasn't cell phones when you went
No,
in.
it wasn't cell phone. I got introduced to a cell phone in prison, right? Touch phone and all. I couldn't even turn it on, right? But at that time, they still had flip phones, but they didn't have the actual smartphones.
Right.
So one of the questions I asked the correctional officer, I said, man, what advice can you give me with 4 or 5 years headed to the streets? What advice can you give me as a free man and what you see what's going out here for an inmate that's going to be labeled a convict? Never like that label, right? That's going to be labeled a convict. What type of advice can you give me on my way home? And the number one thing he always told me was like, you start now, don't wait till you get home. You say you got 5 years to go, you start studying. You start getting certified. You start taking up as much training as you possibly can, because there's room for you. And there's a such thing as called change. And he asked me second time, he said, you know what change is, right? I said, man, go look up the definition of change, man. He said it comes in different variables.
This is a correctional officer.
This is the correctional officer, right? And she was a woman, right? She used to every now and then bring us little snacks here and there. She just believed in the people that was doing the work to get home. So she was really, really encased with the community in prison. She had a brother that was incarcerated in another state, and she's just always has seen something in me that I didn't see in myself. So
that brings me to another question. 2 questions, then I want to move on to what you're doing now and the challenges for people that are coming out of institutions back to their community. But the first one is, I've heard over and over, especially I was in law enforcement for many, many years, and I would hear from activists and things that, like, for example, we should do away with prisons. We shouldn't send people to prison. But I just heard you say that you needed to go to prison, maybe not for as long as you were there, but what I heard you say is prison helped you.
Yes, sir.
So what is your thought on people that think there's no use for prisons, we need other avenues for people that get in trouble, and that there's no need we should shut our prisons down?
Right. Touchy question. I had a couple issues in prison with cats about prison, right? And one was, I told a man in front of the TV area one time that you are one of the reasons why, excuse my language, this motherfucker was built for. You don't deserve freedom, right? In front of about 10, 15 other inmates.
How'd that go over?
Well, we're sitting watching a volleyball game, right? And the volleyball game was like a national volleyball game, right? And it was like high schools, right? They had a girl on TV. You know how volleyball players dress, right?
Yes,
she couldn't
I
have
do.
been no more than about 14 years old, 13 years old, right? And the comment he made, right, it just horrified me, right? To know that
for such a young girl.
Man, I got a daughter, right? I got a daughter, right? And man, this dude ended up going to blows behind this, right? What we call wore him out in front of the TV area. Ended up going to the hole, 4 or 5 days, came back. And Lightweight had an issue with a couple of other inmates that had heard what I said, but had put it in the wrong context, right? So it was a few what I call elders. It was a few elders that I really, really trusted in prison, not only with my freedom, but with a lot of the advice that they have to give other people about the way you walk in prison, right? So I took my argument to the elders, which was a lightweight counsel that can either tell you either you got to get off of this yard or you can actually stay, right?
Right.
And they're the ones that usually pass judgment on a lot of the child molesters, a lot of the what they call snitches, a lot of the people that's snitch, but they feel like it was for the right reason, right? You can go in front of a council of elders and state your case, and you might just end up being able to stay on the yard, right? So at that time, I had a few negative cats that was didn't like Joseph Thomas and what I stood for, first of all, because I wasn't a hardened gang member, and I was always the one on the prison yard worried about the visiting room. Because my mama was up there Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, every single visit. So when you talked about a riot,
be available.
oh my God, when you talked about a riot or shutting the prison down or going on lockdown, I'm in the middle of everything like, man, wait, hold on. We can solve this. What is the problem? Black and white, Mexicans on blacks. Just this dude, he from Old Park, he from Sacramento, he just stole somebody's shoes out the gym. And just a lot of the little issues that I used to kind of
That
like.
would have stopped you from seeing your mom.
Right, it would stop me. Well, see, they didn't understand it was more about the visiting room. A lot of the council elders just seen it that there was some power that I had that I didn't realize that I had. So now they started coming get me to talk to the youngsters, because when I used to get in the middle of the conversation, the way I used to paint the cause and effect of what's going on and the possibilities of what this can transpire into, people always respected it. Okay, I didn't even think about it that way. Man, you do want to go home, right? So you think you do this to this man, what you think he's finna do to you? It's an ongoing, it's almost like the Israel and the conflict we're going in with the Middle East right now. It'll be backwards and forth until somebody comes to some type of resolution, right? So the council of elders, they was kind of like, okay, so what was this about? I said, man, the man made a very, very, very disrespectful comment towards young teens, man, and I got a daughter at home, man, and it touched me deeply. Now, if you feel like I owe him an apology for the way I responded to that, then I mean, that can be given. But my right, I was right, you know what I'm saying? And then when I explained it, they ended up getting a little leeway about it. So yeah, that was one of the ones that I can kind of like pinpoint on what made me really look at prison like, okay, some of these dudes definitely need to be here. Whether or not they need to be in a cage 23 hours a day with 1 hour up out of, you know what I'm saying?
What it's like inside.
Now, that's different. That's a different argument. Right now, I do believe some of the rules and a lot of things don't apply to no human, right? I don't believe no human need to be locked in no cage 23 hours a day, right? And see, that's where the gray area come in at when people be talking about is prison needed or is it not needed? No, some of the things that come with prison can be absolutely abolished, and that is solitary confinement, right? I'm an advocate against solitary confinement. It is something that is just so brutal. Matter of fact, I was in solitary confinement for 2 years straight, right? Coming out the cell, 45 minutes a day.
Don't really see people.
Oh, no daylight at all. No daylight, no sun, no none of that, right? It is real, right? Behind something that absolutely had nothing to do with me. My mom always sent me boxes, always had my initials in my little hats and my beanies and stuff. Riot take place on the prison yard. My hat fly off and fly on top of a knife that was dug in the ground.
Now it's on you.
Oh, it was mine. My name in the hat, no fingerprints on the knife. It's clearly dug up underneath the ground because they had pictures of it after, you know what I'm saying, when they had everything. Boom. And I'm like, man, you can clearly see fingerprints. Oh, there ain't no fingerprints on it. Oh, so that mean it's mine? Anyway, send me to solitary confinement for 2 years. Total of about 22 months, 2 months, good time. And I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote and I wrote, and it was one of my number one. I still go, anytime I hear anything about solitary confinement or argument against it, because they have them rallies at the Capitol every now and then.
Right.
And I go support those because I believe that that is one of the elements that need to be abolished, right? But it still goes back to the question, well, what do you think about prison as a whole, right? Without prison, right, you'll have way more in people's eyes justified, I don't just want to use the word murders, but when you don't have a solution for someone harming your family member or doing some type of injustice, oh man, the retaliation will be the issue, right? So even though people claim that they don't, but you know, people be happy when they hear that the man molesting my daughter ended up going to prison for life, or the man that made a conscious choice to get behind the wheel, drinking, and then mowed down a whole entire family crossing the crosswalk, deserved to go to prison, right? Now just imagine if they didn't go to prison and that family had to sit back with that on their mind, knowing this dude's still running around here with car keys and get to do what he want to do. And you got a little nephew named Andy that's kind of already off the rocker a little bit. He's gonna go retaliate behind his little sister or his cousin or whatever. So yes, there's definitely a need for incarceration. I just believe certain elements of incarceration need to be abolished.
And as you said, even if that person goes to prison, doesn't mean that person's not eventually going to come out.
Right.
And so how do we want them to come back to our community? Last question on this before we get into some of the work that you've done since you came out. So just a minute ago, you said you were in the marching band.
Yes, sir.
You played trumpet.
Yes, sir.
And in case, I want to paint a picture for people about the marching band.
Yes, sir.
Please so you wore a uniform.
Yes, I did.
White and purple uniform, had a little dragon on it in a few spots.
Yes, sir.
Had a hat.
Had a hat.
With a big plume on it.
Yes, sir.
You went to New York.
Yes, sir.
I think you went to D.C.
D.C., yep, Canada.
I won't say what happened to our room because we were roommates every time we went on a trip.
Every time. Right.
I think most people would, if they only knew the part we just talked about of your incarceration, they would be shocked about what we just said about you wearing a little white uniform, marching around in the street, going all over the place, performing, playing the trumpet.
Right.
So I know from personal experience from people like you and many other people I know that I either grew up with that went to prison or I met after they went to prison that are some of the best people I know.
Yes, sir.
So talk, not this cat that people like him that you saw in the TV room, but I know there's more people in the prisons that people in their mind say if they're in prison, they're just horrible, evil people.
Right.
Talk about the people that you met in the prison that if you were to talk to people about who's incarcerated, what you'd want them to know if they don't have that personal experience about people like yourself that, you know, a few bad decisions in your life and a few bad roads you got on got you there, but that's not inherently who you are.
Who I was, right. So the first part of that question, the marching band, right? What I didn't understand that the reason why I fell in love with the marching band because it brought structure to my life, right?
Wow.
We had and I don't know if this is what...
And we had structure with Ike Padgett as our director.
Man, that bullhorn,
he was nothing but structure.
Come on, man, you know how many times I used to get pulled out of that practice early in the morning? We used to be out there practicing before the football team got there.
Before school.
Right,
yes.
Before school.
6 a.m.
Right, 6 a.m., man.
Yeah.
Don't talk about them band camps.
So the cat that did 16 years in prison was playing a trumpet at 6 a.m. on the football field at Sac High.
Man. I absolutely
who's
loved
gonna believe that?
Yeah, I got a couple cats that question me like, man, for real? And I'll be like, for real? And man, come on, man. I mean, my love for music, right, I didn't even understand, right? And then even when I got to prison, right, music was a scapegoat for me, right? I used to put on a pair of headphones and get away from prison. Two things I loved about prison, and that was sleeping and my headphones, right? Oh, and playing a game of chess. Right, so those three elements, it got me away from the reality that I was actually living, right? So, like I said, prison to me brought a form of structure, right? And what introduced me to structure was the marching band. You know, some people get it in the Army, some people get it in the police force, some people get it in Catholic schools that parents can already see, I'm finna put my child in here, football teams, right? Because he needs some type of structure. He needs some type of mentoring. He needs some type of team around him, right? And that's what I got out of the marching band, right? I had aunts and uncles and chaperones and that I respected, right? And they all, for some reason, seen the little Joe Thomas in me and where it was a possibility that I could be headed. They all didn't mean me the best, but I think I got more good out of it than I did bad, right?
Well, and let me just note, our band director, Ike Padgett, was not a pushover, somebody that babied you.
Right.
It wasn't somebody that, poor little Joe.
Oh, no.
Right, like, let me cut him some slack.
Right.
That's not how he, so that structure you're talking about wasn't like a feel sorry for you structure. That structure was strict.
It was strict. Look, I know where you're going. I'll never ever forget. Last time I seen Ike Padgett was right here on the bar He
On
was
Stockton?
at a bar, Stockton Boulevard. I was on the run. I'd already knew that the police was looking for me, that I was headed to prison. Walked in this bar, Ike Padgett. It was like a dream, sitting at the bar, right? And I'd never ever forget. I explained to him what was going on. He said, man, he asked me, he said, are you surprised? He said, man, you had plenty of opportunities, but that's not the issue, right? First of all, you got to remember it's life after prison, right? And he asked me, did you do it? Yes, right? He said, well, get ready to go turn yourself in. And when you come home, this world gonna be waiting on you. Just make sure the way you go into prison is not the way that you come out, right?
Wow.
And it kind of like gave
More
me,
than just a band director.
man, Morty was a big brother. He was a how would I, a disciplinarian, right?
Oh, he
I could
definitely
grab
was
me
that.
by my collar in a minute.
He throw
Jack me
a
up,
load of keys at you too.
throw that bullhorn at you, boy. Look, oh man. And
Who he happened to be from Louisiana too.
yeah, he happened to be from Louisiana too. And I mean, you know, I just loved his structure, man, and the way he geared his children and his family. You know, it was almost like the dream family for me. Yeah, I mean, him and Mr. Conley. It was almost like, you know, those were the type of fathers that I used to wish I used to go home to, right? And I always paid attention to coming home to an empty home with no brothers, no sisters, nobody to really play with, nobody to communicate with. The only thing where I would get that type of communication with people is to go out into the neighborhood, right? So that marching
They
band.
were the substitute.
Oh man, I look forward to the marching band, man. I look forward to being able to communicate with all these different races and these different people. I really look forward to the stipends, right? I used to save my stipends. You know, when we go on the marching band trip, we used to get big stipends, right? I'm talking about we'd get an envelope with about $100 in it for the whole week, right? And I'm the only one made it back to Sacramento with all my stipend money, right? I'm eating off everybody else. I'm trying my hardest to save this money to be able to go to Joe's and Hahns and buy me a pair of tennis shoes, or to be able to spend that money on something other than junk food, which a lot of the other kids was able to do. So it was a lot of those accolades that made me look forward to being a part of that structure, right? And then when I got past the marching band, and once I identified what the marching band actually was, I looked for other structures. So I'm like, okay, well, shoot, I can just get in a group of people and create a family now. Okay, that's basically what I did with the marching band. And then instead of me doing it in a healthy way, I ended up creating that same family amongst gangs, right? And I'm not going to say all gangs, because it was the only real gang that I was affiliated was Oak Park, right? And that was really all I knew, because Oak Park was a city in its own.
It was.
Right? And it wasn't until I ended up, let me see, when I realized that it was other structures, I'm going to say, no, it was a little bit before prison. But you know, matter of fact, I kind of found that same structure in church. I got in church for a little bit. A good little 2-3 years. I got on the usher board and all type of different stuff, right? So when I started realizing that it's not about your blood family, that you can make a stranger on the street family, especially if they do you well. And then, you know, I had a couple friends like you know what I'm saying, that I kind of knew a little bit of your story. I always remember you were one of the only people in the neighborhood at a go-kart. Right? The only people.
That was a waste of money.
Right. But couldn't really ride it. You know what I'm saying? Right? Round and round in circles in the little parking lot next to your house.
That's right.
And you know what I'm saying? I'll never ever forget.
I forgot all about that.
Yeah, I grew up thinking, until we got to high school and I got to actually really create a real friendship with you, I'd always thought you and Mario Calhoun was brothers.
We called each other brothers.
Yeah. I always thought y'all was brothers. Not only that, y'all looked alike to me, man. And
dressed alike half the time, too.
Right. And to see him go a complete other opposite way, and to see you go the other way, and it almost left me on the fence being able to see two choices. And I'm like, I know for a fact I don't want to go to YA, because Mario ended up going to YA at a young age, right? He never, ever was able to get his feet up
after middle school.
Right. Yeah. So I was able to see that was somewhere that I did not want to go, right? And I understood that school had possibilities that can actually get me and my family out of poverty. I understood that at a young age. So I immediately started thinking about, I didn't understand what the word entrepreneur meant, but I started thinking about, what am I going to do with myself, right? I didn't realize that my mama wasn't going to be here forever, right? I didn't realize that I could wake up one day and I'll never, ever have a bowl of soup and a blanket that I can go knock on and get at any time of the day. Right. So when a lot of these accolades became real for me in prison, I immediately went back to the word structure. How do I create a structure for not only me, but for my kids also, to where we can actually create, I want to say, some type of form of generational empowerment. I'm not even going to say wealth, because it's not even really about wealth with me. It's about being able to show my kids and my son and my family that there's a such thing as a restart in your life. I feel like that's a generational wealth element that people don't even understand, right? That there's a such thing as you can make a mistake today and you can correct that mistake and live a better life tomorrow.
And let's talk about that, because you've created a couple organizations that are doing some great things, and I don't think we'll even be able to touch on everything you do.
Right.
But you created an organization, actually, as I just recently found out, you started this while you were incarcerated, at least the thought process
Yes, sir.
behind United and Guided.
Yes, sir.
Talk a little bit about what United and Guided does and why you started it.
Okay. Well, one of my best friends and brothers, he was on his way to the NBA. His name is Richard Johnson, right? He's was Kevin Johnson was one of his main mentors, right? At the time that I was actually in the game, like I said, I never was a hardened gang member, but I was a cat that knew how to get resources out of the community, right? So I always had a little bit of money, always had the best of cars, always had cars with rims and stuff on it. And I had my little brother, which was Richard Johnson. He used to come back home. He was at that time, he was going to Hawaii State University playing ball, getting ready to go to the NBA. But he would sacrifice almost everything he was doing in Hawaii to come back to Sacramento to Oak Park and hang with me, drive my cars for the weekend, late getting back to school on a Monday, right? And it was almost like the light that I shined on the negative parts of life almost enticed him to take another route in life, right? And I really, really paid attention to that once I got to prison. Why? Because, me and my other best friend, Jermaine Mosby, you remember him, Chunk, with the freckles, right? We always thought that Richard was going to be our way out of poverty because he was so good at basketball. He was up underneath Kevin Johnson, and we just knew he was going to be the next protege going into the NBA. He ended up getting into a little incident at Hawaii State, sent him down a whole nother path, right? So when he came back, I felt a little bit of guilt. A man make his own decisions, right?
Right.
I felt a little bit of guilt that I shined the light on the wrong thing while he was in my care, right? So when I look back on that and I thought about, okay, well, how can I make sure that don't happen to the next generation, right? I'm sitting on a prison bunk. So I never ever forget the thought. Trying to figure out, okay, I own property in Louisiana. I'm connected to all of the right people in Sacramento. And it's elements that I could have helped the Joseph Thomas and me not take the left turn, not take the left turn when I could have took a right turn. So if I had those elements to give to someone when I came home, how would I go about giving that? The first thought came with, okay, I'm going to start a nonprofit. I didn't even know the word nonprofit. I didn't even know what that meant. I was just thinking I'm just going to start an organization that was similar to the YMCA, right? Because even that, I'd always heard about the great work they did, but I'd never seen the work being done in my community. Right. So in order to be a part of that, you had to go downtown and you had to go through a lot of different accolades that absolutely had nothing to do with Oak Park. Yeah, we had Edna Boye at the Oak Park Community Center. She had Africa Labara food. Yeah, we had the free lunch program at McClatchy Park where you can go up there and eat for free. But we never had a pool of mentors, big brothers, people that can actually shine the light on the right turn instead of the left turn. Right. So that's where the thought came in at. So at that time, my brother, he was dealing with addiction. Richard Johnson, one didn't make it to the NBA. He ended up going down a dark path when I went to prison. So he ended up having to go to treatment. He created an addiction and a love for crack. Went under the underworld, should I say, for about 2-3 years, right? I heard about it on a prison call, made my mama go run him down, picked him up, and brought him up there to see me. Me and him had an extensive conversation about what we were going to do when I came home and what I needed him to do before I got home, right? So my mom took him straight from the visiting room, took him straight up to the Roberts Family Development Center, and helped got him a job with Mr. Roberts, right? So I told him, stay up underneath Mr. Roberts, learn everything that Mr. Roberts is doing up there, and we're going to come home and we're going to emulate the same exact thing. We're going to call it Old Papa Joe Enterprises. We're going to have 4 different components. One is going to be mentoring. One is going to be entertainment. One is going to be the restaurant industry to, salute my grandfather, because that's actually where Old Papa Joe Enterprise came from. And one, we're going to try to buy some property, right? So he came right back and put all these elements in place, right? By the time I came home, he had came from just being an employee for Mr. Roberts to being Mr. Roberts' program manager, right? So me and him put together the blueprint. I also started working for Mr. Roberts, understood that Mr. Roberts wanted to keep you at a certain level when a lot of other people was trying to empower you to get to the next level. So that didn't work too long for me, but the check was good. So me and him plotted and planned, and we came up with United and Guided.
Which was the Papa Joe's.
Which was Old Papa Joe Enterprises. We just changed the name from United and Guided. Ended up running across a man by the name of Imani Lucas. He's from New York. He went to Cal Berkeley, got a master's degree in business from Cal Berkeley. He was working for Dignity Health at the time, walked away from Dignity Health, and now he's the CEO of our program, which is called United and Guided, right? We're on the 3rd floor at the Family Justice Center. We have been solidified for about 3 years now, 8 employees. And we're just super, super serious about the work that we do.
So I want to talk about a specific thing that I think is a little bit more recent that you started. And as we look across, not just in Sacramento, but across the country,
Yes, sir.
people concerned about violence
Right.
and shootings. And
Right.
you can turn on the TV any day of the week.
Right.
And you'll see some big shooting, little
sir.
shooting, but shootings in every city, Sacramento to New York.
Right.
And all these people coming up with these, magic solutions
Right,
that is
right.
going to stop the shootings. But yet when you turn on the TV tomorrow, you're going to see shootings again.
Yes, sir. You're going to see him.
So you started a program to deal with gun violence. Talk a little bit about that, what it is, what made you want to do that,
Okay.
and how, what have you seen come of that?
Right. Okay. Well, I pitched the idea to Mervyn Brookins about 5 years ago, right? And they tweaked the name a little bit. The program now is called After the Shot, right?
Okay.
And what it is a program geared to bringing awareness to the youth about the do's and don'ts and the causes and effect of gun violence, right? So right now, it's a team of us, about maybe 10 individuals. We go around to all the high schools, and we do a presentation to where we actually explain to the kids what each one of our crime was. All of us have been shot. All of us have shot someone. All of us have been to prison, right? So we all get up individual.
Not to cut you off, but I want to make note. These folks aren't all from Oak Park.
No.
These are from different neighborhoods,
And that's
correct?
the key. That was the whole key to the pitch in the initial, because that structure that I talked about earlier was another structure that I found in prison, right? And that was a group of people from Sacramento that had a lot of time like me. Some of them had life sentences that possibly wasn't never coming home, but I actually seen them doing the good work that I was doing in prison, starting in prison. All of them was from different areas of Sacramento.
Which normally don't get along.
John Wyndham, he's one of the founders of 29th Street Crip. He just started an organization called Yava, right? He's teaching mental health therapy through cultivation of plants. Most phenomenal program I've seen since I've been home. This young man, I ain't gonna say young man because he's the same age as me. Him and his wife have
Yeah,
created.
we're not young anymore.
Yeah, he have created a mentorship around growing a plant, right? And he teaches, just like growing a young man, into growing a plant. And then after the young man get done with his mentoring program, he take that plant home with him, and he raise that plant, and he cultivate that plant into his own life until the time to where the plant becomes an adult, which is the same thing as a man that have to leave the mom's home. Now the plant is leaving from the container, going into the soil of the world, right? So I met him in prison. He was one that I seen was doing phenomenal work. He was mentoring people, youngsters in prison that was coming to prison, 18, 19 years old. Got other cats from SAC trying to give him a knife. He's giving him a book and a program to follow to make sure he make it home, right? And it was cats from Meadowview, cats from like Savine Griggs. He's another cat, one of the first ones to get a life sentence behind a gang-related crime. He did like 22 years, made it home, met him in prison, seen him doing the awesome things that made me 100% confident. Boy, you was coming home. Because he was one of the dudes that had a life sentence. And he used to always be like, you think so? I said, man, listen to me, man. You coming home, boy, you just got to keep doing what you're doing. Because it used to just surprise me that these hardened dudes that I knew out here before prison was in prison doing the right thing and serious about coming home. So in my mind, I was always thinking, okay, I see we got some dudes, might have 100 people I might know from Sacramento, but there's like 8 to 10, 15 dudes in here. I used to tell my mom in the living room that's actually doing good stuff in here and that are on their way home. Those are the circle, that is the alliance that I created in prison, right? Amongst these dudes. And then I was able to pitch that idea to Merv, and we came up with the After the Shock group of groups of individuals from all 4 areas of Sacramento, right? Del Paso Heights, Meadowview, Oak Park, in East Sacramento, right? And we go around to the schools and we tell that story about what led us to prison, what transpired, and then the individuals that we are now, and why you want to look at our life and utilize a lot of things that you're hearing to know that these are the things that you don't do. Like,
And what have you seen as the results in the young people that you talk to from hearing, like you talked earlier about you needed structure and you were looking for structure and you found structure in people that were not doing necessarily good things. And now what it appears to me is you are delivering structure with a group of men that are doing good things. So what do you see as the result in the young people that you talk to at the schools and other places that you talk to
say,
folks?
for instance, we met a young man at Highlands High School about maybe 3 weeks ago, right? I just kept, as we were telling our story, right, and we're in the auditorium, matter of fact, the lunchroom. At the end, I locked eyes with this young man like 2 or 3 times throughout the presentation, right? At the end of the presentation, he specifically came straight up to me, and he was like, I heard everything you saying, man, and I just need a mentor, right? Gave him my card, pulled him to the side, me, Aaron Cardoza, and another one of us, pulled this young man to the side. He had told me about how he was a star running back of the football program, and his big brother was already involved in gangs, super, super tough, and he had always wanted to be like his brother because he didn't have nobody
Like
else.
a lot of people do.
Right. So he was like, I'm still deal with this young man to this day, check in with him, got him in a program. He's in Merv's and them Young Gents program now, right? But to know that not the after the conversation, but the after effect of the whole presentation had resonated with just that one young man. Right. So where I don't even have to call him, he called me on Mondays now, right? Check in, yeah, I'm doing good, Mr. Thomas. Just want to say thank you. But the thing that just blew my mind more than anything, his mom called me, right? He didn't give his mom my number. His mom went in his room and found my card and then questioned him about the card, right? And then she called me and was like, man, I just wanted to say thank you. I can see the difference in the way he deal with me. Because, one of my main things I push to young gentlemen, man, if you don't respect your mama, man, you can't respect me and what I'm saying.
What would your mom think about that phone call?
She knew. She knew who I was. She knew. And I say that to say, she understood who I was before I understood who I was.
They always do.
And she understood what I was dealing with in life was temporary, right? And that she used to say, this storm too shall pass, right? Meaning that it only rains for a little while. The sun will come back out again, right? And I am feeling the sun rays now, big bro. I'm feeling it everywhere I walk, people's energy. I'm quick, like I tell my son all the time, I'm quick to help. Not because I'm trying to show off or nothing like that. It's my duty, right? For the righteousness that I found in the world after all of that, because I wasn't supposed to make it home. My deal was 15 to life, right? It was the accolades and the people that came in to talk for me. By the way, Ward Conley sent a letter in for me. One of the ones that actually got me the deal that I got, which I ended up taking the secondary deal. It went from 15 to life to 16 with 85%, right? Thanks to a letter from Ward Conley. That was at the time when he was pushing that agenda about Martin Luther King. You know what I'm saying? Him and my mom had a little issue. Mom wasn't feeling that, right? After all the time she respected him, that was the first time I ever heard her say something bad about Ward.
She wasn't the only person that had an issue with Ward.
She was not feeling that. Yo, he let me down. I said, Mama, look, he still got me out of prison, girl. You gotta remember, right? Okay. But yeah, man. That's one thing I will say. She knew, man. She knew where her son was.
Last question before I want to close with, how people can help all the amazing work that you are doing, is you founded another organization that, in a lot of ways, is really about where you're from.
Yes, sir.
Called Sacktown Mardi Gras, I think is what it's
Yes,
called.
sir.
I think this last year you had 4 different parts of the city,
Yes, sir.
including downtown, a parade in Oak Park, and some other festivities and resources. What is it, and why did you start it?
Okay. Sacktown Mardi Gras is element of the culture of New Orleans, right? And I would say that this is one of the platforms, one of the things that always stuck out in my mind, which I believe that made me fall in love with the trumpet, right? Is when I came to Sacramento at 11 years old, 11, 12 years old, I never ever had seen a parade out here where they actually had kids marching with marching bands and music and all of that stuff, right? So I literally can remember being about
Which
11,
is pretty common in
which
New
is
Orleans.
pretty common. You got a marching band in every school, junior high school, elementary school.
Right.
You got a music program, right?
Right.
And these music programs is that structure that we talked about earlier. These is because you need many different structures to keep kids' attention. Some of them be
Right.
football, some of them be
Yep.
music program. If you don't watch out, some of them can be gangs. That's actually what I said happened to me earlier. But Sacktown Mardi Gras to me has always been a component of life that I feel like that is the perfect outlet for kids in schools to get involved in music, right? So when I came up with Sacktown Mardi Gras, it was an economical stimulant for the city of Sacramento, which will empower all of the small businesses in Sacramento, and it has an educational component to it, which brings the understanding of music, fashion, and entertainment, right? So our partnership with this organization called BTU Arts, right? And we do what is called an introduction to music through Sacktown Mardi Gras, right? So we do a petting zoo where we're putting together a curriculum to be able to take to all of the junior high and elementary schools to be able to implement some sort of music program and petting zoo to be able to introduce kids to different instruments, right? And that was a component of Mardi Gras that always stuck out in my mind, that everybody's gonna wanna know how to play an instrument. Everybody's gonna be able to enjoy the music side of music, right? So Sacktown Mardi Gras was the platform in which I seen that we could implement different streams of education, entertainment, and music into the community, right? So as of now, we've been in existence now for 2 years.
To give structure to
structure,
kids
to
that
give-
might need some structure.
that might need some structure. It's almost like a Big Brother program, right? Because I mean, you don't
Just through music.
just
instead
through
of
music,
football or something else.
exactly. So you can plan for Mardi Gras all year long, right? So you have people and families and kids that may have seen Mardi Gras this year, but next year they might want to be involved in a parade.
Right.
They might want to know, where can I get involved in music at? They might want to know where I can get involved at float building at. Not only do I want to catch bees this year, but I want to be involved in the process of actually making bees, making costumes, the entertainment side of it. I always tell people all the time, if you want to know where Beyonce knows got her elegance set and her class set, look at the culture of New Orleans, right? If you see stems of Mardi Gras and stems of entertainment and fashion all throughout her music, and that's learned from Mardi Gras, right? The culture of Mardi Gras.
So what I've heard you say, now we've known each other for 40 years, but what I've heard you say today is that you were looking for structure as a kid, even when you didn't know you were looking for structure. That structure, in a lot of cases, saved you, and some structures helped you get into trouble.
Yes, sir.
If they were negative. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, but what I've heard, all the descriptions of all the things, and we haven't even gotten to everything you're doing.
Yes, sir.
But is to provide structure and positive influence and mentors to young people so they are able to chase their dreams as opposed to going down some of the roads that would lead them to incarcerations and things like that. And so what I see every day is people looking for ways that they can help.
Right.
In our busy lives, as we're running around with family and jobs and all these other things, I truly believe that the vast majority of people they see the violence, they see the things going on, they just don't know how they can help.
Right.
And I'll personally say supporting you
Yes, sir.
would be helping our
sir.
community.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
And supporting people like you in every community across this country that are actually doing real work, not just talking,
Yes, sir.
but have the experience and the drive and the compassion to actually use that experience in a positive way. So if somebody listening to this is inspired by your story and the things that you're doing, how can they help any number of the organizations that you have founded and that you work with to help ensure that our young people have a future, a positive future, and are not, contributing to violence, but also not being able to chase their dreams? So how could somebody help you? How could they either contribute time or funding or whatever the things that you need for assistance to help you continue your work?
Right. Well, first I'm gonna say sacktownmardigras.com, right? We have several different components that fall up underneath that structure. It's just not about parades, right? Like say for instance, we're doing an anti-vape campaign, right? That's gonna actually, we came up with this slogan called Vape Busters, to where with the new Ghostbusters movie coming out, right? We're pitching a concept and an idea to take this curriculum to the schools, the junior high schools and the elementary school. We got kids vaping in elementary school, right?
I know.
This is the epidemic that
My
people
daughters
don't
used
even
to
want.
talk about it. There's people vaping in the bathroom.
Man, come on, man. I mean, you got to think about what that does to young, undeveloped mind that has got introduced to this for the first time, that the parents didn't even think that needed to be acknowledged, right?
Right.
And next thing you know, they doing laundry and it's a vape pen in her 12-year-old daughter's pocket, right? And she's talking about it's for a friend, but it's really for her.
Right.
Right. So that's just one of the components, the reason why the need that I tell people all the time. When you hear Sacktown Mardi Gras, don't just think that parades and festivals. No. Think about our petting zoo.
That's the show part.
Yeah, that's the show part, right? But we do work 11 months throughout the year, right? We have a social club. We have a fundraiser. We do a talent show. We do a fashion show, right? Then we have our Crawfish and Catfish Festival every year for the main fundraiser for Sacktown Mardi Gras at Southside Park, right? So yes, there's elements around Sacktown Mardi Gras that actually can also help not only the community at hand, but help create that structure that we talked about for kids. Not only kids, but it goes back to actually helping the whole family. Because, in order to help the kids, you got to look at the family structure that the kid is surrounded by, right? And then we have my main organization that I was telling you about earlier, unitingandguided.org. We are also a nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit. And what we do is we do a weekly workshop at the Family Justice Center every Wednesday, 2 o'clock to 5 o'clock. You can go to our website, unitingandguided.org, to get more information on that. Also, I have a mentoring program called Brotherhood for You, right, to where we mentor the elderly, the ex-offender, which I call the returning citizen, and the kids headed for trouble, which we talked about earlier, the KID, right? So these are all different elements. When people think about what the structure look like, sometimes they're the right organization, right, to where you can actually not only get involved in as an adult, right, to come get the services to get you certified. If you're 35 years old, you have a kid that's, let's see, 8 years old, but you need to get structure your doggone self in order to help your kid.
Sure.
You come to our workshop on Wednesdays. You figure out, how did I get certified, being that I am one of the only male certified doulas in the state of California, right? So I got a couple different elements, a couple different structures that support the bigger structure, right, which is unitingandguided.org, right? So I would say get involved in some sort of community engagement in your neighborhood. Look up organizations like unitingandguided.org, Sacktown Mardi Gras, Brotherhood for You, New Generation Entertainment, which my son and I founded about 6 years ago. We create that platform and that structure for kids that's running around here talking about shoot 'em up, bang bang in their music and don't understand what conscious rap is really about, right? So we thrive ourselves on identifying local artists in Sacramento, screening their music first to try to figure out what they're talking about, define to them what they're talking about, and whether or not they actually want to talk about that, and do they know how to rap about things other than guns and violence and bullcrap. So that's what I praise my son for, Jamari Thomas. You can look him up. His name is called Nerd Boy Maury. He's a very solidified rapper in the city of Sacramento. He really don't get too much play because he don't talk about violence and guns and shoot 'em up, bang, bang. But that don't mean his father is not going to do everything in his power to create a platform to where these kids can understand the difference in him and them. Even though they're the same, they just talking about a different message. So when they hear their music, they tend to gravitate towards that platform to be like, oh, okay, this is why I can't get booked. This is why I can't have a festival at Cesar Chavez Park. This is the reason why my music ain't playing on FM 102, right? So like I said, to go back to that platform that we was talking about in that structure, it's about different structures like that. I love going back to Black Child Legacy Campaign, right? Black Child Legacy Campaign is one of a bigger mentorship for me, myself, right? Because without Black Child Legacy Campaign, there wouldn't have been no Daryl Roberts. There wouldn't have been no Greg Kings, in which that is my daily activity, the job that I actually do. I'm an employee of Black Child Legacy Campaign, which I work for the Fruit Ridge Collaborative Center. Being a community liaison worker, it is my job and my duty to create an in-between between the resources and the people. And sometimes that is creating another structure in which these people, adults and the kids and the ex-gang members, and I mean, you know, the ones that's not gang, just people that just looking for someone, a family, right? And that's what I try to do. That's what I try to shine the light on.
That's awesome, because I think you are somebody that people, if we want to make tomorrow better for all people, you're somebody that has the college degree, if you will, in life experiences
Lived and learned experience,
that can have impact on young people and even people that aren't so young that are coming out. And so if people want to see our community get better and they're challenged with some of the things that we see, violence, crime, just unhealthy behavior, you're somebody that they should support, because you have those lived experiences, and you're actually one of the people that actually puts it to use and to help other people, not yourself, but other people. So I would, so again, if somebody listening to this wants to assist in that and help make our community safer, healthier, you know, because we can't leave neighborhoods behind. That brings our whole city down. They can go to one of those websites. That'd be a good jumping off spot to start, and they can get in touch with you. So, Joe, you know, we're relatively the same age, so it seems weird to say I'm proud of you, but I am very, very proud of you. You know, I'm one of the people that, in my mind, I never saw you going to prison. I was surprised when you went to prison, because
the same thing,
what I saw, what I saw in high school was not somebody that I pictured in prison. And so I'm so happy to see that you have used that experience to help people. And I think all of our parents that knew each other so well through high school would be proud of the things that you're doing. And I think you're changing lives, and anybody that can help you, it would be energy, time, and funding well spent. So thank you for your time.
SacktownMardiGras.com, man. That is the best way. Like I said, not only are you investing in the actual foundation, but you're investing in the community. You're investing in that platform. You're investing in that structure, right? Hopefully I'll see you guys on the parade route. We're doing an extravagant parade on Broadway this year. We have entertained all of that energy from Old Sacramento, Capitol Mall, and we're going to be on Broadway, 2 different parades, 2025, February, end of February, day parade and night parade. Anybody want to contribute, may want to create a float, may want to create their own crew party, right? Anybody know about Louisiana know what crew party means? That means 11 months worth of partying, baby. So, you know, if you want to support the kids, you want to support the youth, I promise you anything you do, man, will make it to the people that it's supposed to be to, man. And thank you, Dan, for everything you do, bro.
Thanks,
and we're
Joe.
proud of you too, brother.
Thank you.
Proud of you, man. It didn't surprise me at all, man.
It surprised everybody else, depending on what career I went down.
Right.
All right, thank you, man.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
One of the big purposes of A Way Forward is to hear different voices and different opinions, because that is how we can make informed decisions ourselves. So if you are someone that would like to come on A Way Forward to express your opinion, go to chiefhahn.com/podcast. Chief, HAHN.com/podcast.